I am Dianna White-Gould. I am from the Cleveland area. I was born and raised here, and I come from a musical family. And I currently teach at Dyke School of the Arts. I'm an educator, vocal music, a concert pianist, and very happy to be working with my colleagues today. We've been working on this virtual concert series for a year now. It's been really wonderful.
Hi, I'm Christopher Jenkins. I'm an associate dean at Oakland Conservatory and a violist, also a DMA candidate at CIM and a PhD student in musicology at Case Western. Also really glad to be here with my colleagues. It was really just about a year ago this month, I think, that we started this project, so it's really great to be bringing it to fruition like this.
And I'm Matthew Jones, tenor. I teach and sing throughout Cleveland. I came here to study at Cleveland State University, post-bac in music education and master's in performance. And grateful for Chris for this opportunity a year ago, and which we just worked on with things that Dianna and I had performed and pieces we knew about, so we put this together, I think, really easily. Mm-hmm. So it's been a great experience.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna shine, let it shine, let it shine.
So the question, the role of music in my life, and so I guess my situation is kind of unique because I came from a family of musicians, and I think that I kind of think of it as not having a choice. I remember when I was young, my brother took violin lessons, and I went along with my mother to the Suzuki lessons, and I was not really involved in it. But I just, my mother was one that was, you're coming with me and we're gonna go do this. And so I did end up taking violin lessons. And then I ended up studying piano pretty seriously when I was in junior high school and high school, I played violin, but then I was also doing piano. And I had very strict, intense piano teachers. And I guess one story would be my one piano teacher was a Christian Scientist, and she was not married, and her whole life was about piano. So I would go, and the lessons would be like an hour and a half, 2 hours. We would have theory, we would have sight singing, duets, the person that was coming. It was very concentrated, and she would call me up on the phone, and she would want to know if I was practicing, and I would have to show her by putting the phone down, and she would listen. So pretty demanding, and I look back at that now, and I think I did not like it at the time. It was very intense, and I just wanted to be a regular person doing regular things. Although I always loved music, and it kind of is in me, but when I look back on it today, I'm really grateful for that early exposure to something so demanding, because this is so demanding. And when we have experiences like this, it feels like I was prepared sufficiently for, to be able to do this. And like I teach, that's my full-time job. But then when I do things like this, I really enjoy, this is what I really enjoy. And I feel like, I was prepared adequately, which would make my mother very happy, because I think that was her intent.
Well, so for myself, I started taking lessons in violin, and also similar to Dianna, theory, orchestra, everything else, at a Suzuki program in New York City when I was about 7 or 8. So I had that same kind of concentrated training, and it was definitely worthwhile. I kind of wish now that we could find something similar for my son. It's not quite as easy to find those kinds of programs in Cleveland as I think they are in some other cities. But for me, I really grew up listening to music, even though my parents are not musicians, but they played music in the house on records and on the radio all the time. It was actually ceaseless. There was always some Bach or Brahms or something playing at my house. And so now working as an administrator, actually, I have to say that I enjoy the things that I get to do, even though playing music is not necessarily something that I have to do every day professionally. I still really like the leadership aspect of what I get to do in terms of thinking of programming that enhances value and quality of life for students in a music program. That's actually really important to me.
Well, I started early as well, but I dropped out of piano lessons in 3rd grade, and I wish I hadn't once I got to college, because it's not been easy. But like most people, most singers, I grew up singing in the church. All of my family sings on both sides, and so that's sort of what I wanted to do when I went to college, and didn't know that it was going to be classical. But there were different styles of music played in the house. When it was time to study, we heard Bach. When it was time to clean, it was gospel and soul, and so it was varied. But when I got to school, I didn't really see too many. I wasn't exposed to many Black composers, African American performers, and I knew that exists. So I started then, and actually performed that George Walker piece, Mary Worth Links of Chain, on my senior recital, because I did not want to do spirituals. But I found one that was different and sort of art songy. So I've been exploring repertoire and African Americans' experience. So this has been a culmination of that.
Mary wore 3 links of chain. Mary wore 3 links of chain. Mary and blow his soul. All my sins been taken away, taken I'm going home on the morning train. I'm going home on the morning train. I'm going home on the morning train. Oh, don't see me, gonna hear me sing. All my sins been taken away, taken away. When Susanna Jones wears red, her face is like an ancient cameo. When Susanna Jones wears red, her face is like an ancient cameo. Turned round by the ages, comes with the blast of trumpet. Jesus. When Susanna Jones wears red, her face is like an ancient cameo. When Susanna Jones wears red, her face is like an ancient cameo. Turned round by the ages, comes with the blast of trumpet. Jesus. When Susanna Jones wears red, a queen from some dead Egyptian night. When Susanna Jones wears red, a queen from some dead Egyptian night walks once again. Blow trumpet, Jesus. And the beauty of Susanna Jones in red burns in my heart till a fire sharp like pain. Sweet silver trumpet, Jesus, Jesus.
So I think that's a great question, and I think that when we put this together and we were choosing, the composers, and some of the composers we had already we had already been performing and whatnot, and we found links. And the links were, Oberlin, Cleveland, CIM, and I went to Oberlin. I'm related to one of the composers. I studied with one of the, there were just so many links. And I think for me, the important thing is that some of these composers are still living and they're in their 80s and they actually get a chance to hear their music. And that, I'm really getting a kick out of that, because some of the pieces that my mother wrote, she never dreamed that they would be performed. So we're actually scrambling, trying to get, the music together. So just the unsung gems of Cleveland African-American composers, and to me, that they get a chance to hear it and that we get a chance to perform it. I think that's why it matters personally to me. And then it's just beautiful music, that Ohioans and people get to hear this music. So.
Well, I'd say, first of all, as someone who works at Oberlin, it's really important to me that Oberlin has a legacy of educating African-American musicians. One of the first schools to do so, and the folks who went there are important composers, and the thing is that many of them, as Dianna mentioned, are still alive today. Yeah. Leslie Adams, your mother, went to Oberlin, right? And their works are, I would say, underperformed. So the question is, why is that? For one of my projects in my doctorate, I had to write something about a composer who I found in different editions of a textbook, right? Our standard music history textbook. So I talked about William Grant Still. And in the very first edition of the standard textbook, there's a paragraph about him. There are many pages about some other composers, white composers, who we don't talk about now. There's one paragraph on Still. So in the next edition, there were 2 paragraphs on Still several pages about these other composers. The next edition, there was 3 paragraphs on Still. But because we're going about this in an additive way, that is to try to take what we had from the beginning and add more, we can't actually get to a place of actual parody, right? We have to transform the way that we approach diversity in classical music. We can't just add to it, we have to flip it. So thinking about different ways to highlight these composers, like this project, which approaches their work from various different angles, the fact that they're from Ohio, the fact that they're from Oberlin, the fact that one of our performers is related to one of them. Finding new ways to do that is really important, I think, if we're actually going to elevate their works and get them the attention they deserve. And the aesthetic is different. Like the musical flavor that you find in these pieces is different. It's not all the same, it's not uniform between the composers, it's distinct, right? But it's definitely all different in different ways from standard classical repertoire, right? So in a more diverse America, that's what people are going to want to hear. That's what I believe, right? That's what people are going to want to hear, and the direction in which classical music has to go if it's going to stay relevant.
I agree. Actually, that to that point, linking legacies for me, there are many we can talk about. The fact that, again, we put this program together rather easily because Dianna and I had worked together on a project of African American composers. And then again, we had several pieces that we just put together. And to that point, the spirituals I wanted to present, there are different idioms. There's the jazz, blues, folk, and gospel in some elements, but still very, very classical. And I think it just speaks about the fact that we're embracing the tradition, embracing the heritage, but then telling the story in a modern and now, and telling it in a different way, and speaking to some of the issues we're exploring and experienced, I guess, especially last year. I saw over the pandemic that many cultures, many genres, they were all playing spirituals at some point. And just before then, there was a huge conversation about whether or not spirituals were still relevant. And, you know, do they still have meaning? Does it bring up too much from the past? And can we still relate to them? And so I just wanted to present something that shows, yes, they still are significant. And, you know, every genre you can find spirituals in, even now.
Light of mine.